ever cracked open the art of war and thought, okay, how do I win a real battle, like with swords? Well, get ready for a surprise.
Yeah.
Today's deep dive, we're going beyond the battlefields and looking at how this ancient text is actually crazy relevant to everyday challenges, like nailing a presentation at work or navigating, those tricky relationships, all that stuff. And joining us to connect those ancient dots to our modern lives is our expert. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to, Sun Tzu still has a few surprises up his sleeve, even for someone like me, let's put it that way.
All right, so first up, the 5 constant factors. Now that sounds a little technical, maybe even about like battlefield formations, but trust me, it goes way deeper than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're talking about moral law, heaven, earth, the commander, and method and discipline. But what's so fascinating here is that moral law, it leads the pack. You know what I mean? It's at the top of the list.
Right.
Sun Tzu is saying leadership, it isn't just about like barking orders, right? It's about building a foundation of harmony, making sure that everyone is on the same page, everyone is aligned, not just, following the rules because they feel like they have to.
So before you even think about tactics, you need to get everyone on board. Like they need to believe in the mission.
Precisely. Think about it. Think about a company with a terrible work environment. No one trusts the CEO. Everyone's at each other's throats all the time, no matter how amazing their product is or how much money they pour into marketing, they're doomed. Sun Tzu, he knew that way back then. And it's crazy how much more relevant it is now in today's world.
That's a really solid point. Okay, so we've got moral law as our bedrock. We've got to have that. But then Sun Tzu throws this curveball, this idea of deception in warfare. He even goes so far as to say all warfare is based on deception. It makes you stop and think. Ethically speaking, at least.
Yeah, for sure. It's easy to misinterpret, Sun Tzu, he's not saying to just go out there and lie and cheat your way to the top. It's more about outsmarting your opponent, anticipating their next move. But to really do that well, you need to know yourself. Just as well as you know them.
Can you give us some examples from the text? Like, how does this whole deception thing actually work?
Sure. So Sun Tzu talks about these feigned retreats. So imagine you make your enemy think that you're weak. Like you're actually running away. But it's a setup.
Right.
It's a trap. Then there's disinformation, which is a whole other thing. Spreading rumors to confuse everyone, to sow that chaos. And he even suggests using the enemy's own spies against them. Feeding them bad intel and watching them run with it.
So it's about using the knowledge that you have strategically, but not, intentionally misleading people. There's a nuance there.
Exactly. It's about playing the game a step ahead, right? Like, let's say you're in a big negotiation, and the other side, they want you to think they're not interested. Poker face the whole time. Stone cold. But if you've done your homework, you'll see through that act. You'll anticipate their moves, and then you'll use it to your advantage. That's Sun Tzu-level deception.
So we're not talking about being shady. We're talking about being savvy. And speaking of savvy, Sun Tzu had this whole concept about speed and adaptation. He called it the Shuizhan principle.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I hear that, it kind of makes me think of like a martial arts move or something.
Yeah, it kind of is. But it's like for your brain instead of your body.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu, he compares, a well-run army to a snake. Always moving, always ready to strike where you least expect it.
Okay, I like that. I like that visual.
Yeah, and he even tells this story about soldiers from Wu and Ye who were like sworn enemies, right? But they end up having to cooperate during this big storm while they're trying to cross a river.
So even rivals, they can become allies if situation calls for it, huh?
Exactly. And what's so key here is that Sun Tzu, he links this to adaptability. You got to be able to change plans on a dime. Because even your rivals, they can teach you something useful.
It's about being flexible, not just sticking to the plan no matter what.
Right, it's about rolling with the punches.
Like you see that with those startups that are always making changes to their product, like based on what their users are saying. Or a leader who can actually listen to people who disagree with them and then change their mind.
Yeah.
That's Shuizhan in action, right?
100%. It's about turning what could be a weakness into a strength.
Yeah.
And that actually brings us to another one of Sun Tzu's big ideas, the importance of terrain.
Okay, so I'm guessing this is about more than just geography. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Well, you're catching on. Sun Tzu, he was talking about knowing the situation before you make a move. He categorized all these different types of ground war, but it's really about analyzing the situation, figuring out where you stand before you even think about your next step.
So it's like sizing up the situation, the good and the bad, before you jump into the fray.
Exactly. Business decisions, relationships, you name it. Knowing when to argue, when to negotiate, when to just walk away, that's crucial to success, no matter what you're trying to achieve.
You've got to pick your battles, right?
100%. And, sometimes retreating and finding a better position, that's the smartest move.
It's like that saying, live to fight another day.
Yeah. Sun Tzu knew that sometimes the best way to win is to not fight at all. And that takes some serious self-awareness, which, makes me think about that story about the general who refused to attack until he was provoked. And it ended up costing him everything.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It makes you think about, patience and knowing when to hold back.
Yeah, for sure. I think that story, it really shows how important emotional intelligence is. Sun Tzu knew that a leader who loses their cool, that's a liability.
Right, so don't let your ego make decisions that your strategy can't back up.
Exactly. It's about discipline, not just brute force. And that actually connects to another important theme in the art of war, this balance between kindness and discipline. It's kind of a tricky one.
Okay, yeah. Tell me more about that.
So Sun Tzu, he tells this story about a general who punishes his own soldier for stealing, even though it means, they're going to lose this strategic advantage.
Wow, that seems really harsh. There's got to be a bigger lesson there, right?
Oh, there always is with Sun Tzu. See, it's about the fact that, being a good leader, it's not about being everyone's best friend.
Yeah.
It's about earning their respect, showing everyone that the rules, they apply to everyone, no matter who you are. That's how you build trust.
So consistency and fairness, even when it's difficult, that's a tough one, even today.
Yeah, it really is. It's easy to make exceptions for people we like or people who are, valuable to us. But Sun Tzu, I think he would say that, doing that, it undermines your authority and ultimately it weakens your position.
Okay, so we've got moral law that's like the foundation, right? But then on top of that, we've got deception, adaptability, choosing your terrain, and finding that balance between kindness and discipline. It's a lot. Anything else from Sun Tzu's playbook we should hit before we wrap things up?
Well, you've definitely touched on some of the key takeaways here. But remember, the art of war, it's like this dense forest of wisdom. Yeah, we could keep going for hours, and I bet we'd still find new stuff to talk about. What's really resonating with you? What's sticking out?
That moral law thing, honestly, it just keeps coming back to that. It's the thing that really makes everything else work.
That's a great observation. Because Sun Tzu, he understood that strategy. It's not just about, clever tactics, right? It's about the values that are kind of driving your actions. Yeah. If you don't have that strong moral core, even the best plans, they'll eventually just fall apart.
It's like building a house on sand. It might look okay for a little bit, but then the first storm comes along and boom, that's it.
Exactly. Sun Tzu would say, I think, that true strength, it comes from within. Knowing what your purpose is, aligning what you do with your values. That's true for everyone, by the way, not just armies.
So for someone listening right now, someone who's probably not, about to lead an army into battle or anything, how do they actually use these principles, in their everyday life?
That is the question, isn't it? And the answer is, it all depends, right? What are you facing? What are the challenges in your life? What does your own personal terrain look like? Once you know that, then you can start applying what Sun Tzu is talking about and start making your own strategies.
So we're not giving people some kind of one-size-fits-all thing. It's more like we're giving them tools to build their own approach.
Exactly. The art of war, it's not about memorizing, formations or anything. It's about really getting those core principles, deep down. And then figuring out how they apply to your life, how to make them your own.
That's a really empowering way to think about it. So much to think about.
For sure. And as Sun Tzu would say, the real battle we're always fighting is with ourselves. Our own fears, our own limitations, our tendency to just react to things without thinking strategically about them first. Overcoming those obstacles, those internal ones, that's the first step to actually achieving any kind of victory. It doesn't matter what your own battlefield looks like.
But that's a great point to end on. Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.